Don't tell me you don't see it. Look up at the sky.
Guys, I have a confession to make. Cue the sad stare into the camera, the ukulele, the music in the background, the pre-canned script from a PR agency. I'm very sorry to say that, despite all the comments I've been getting recently, I am not, in fact, a boomer, or stick in the mud, or the crusty old man who hates everything simply because it's new that people have been trying to make me out to be. Fallout 1 is almost as old as I am, and with some simple math, you should be starting to get the picture that when I talk about so many of the games I love, I played them a long time after release. I was right there as a dumb teenager playing Skyrim on my PS3. The Mass Effect trilogy, Dragon Age Origins, Red Dead Redemption, Uncharted 2, Dishonored, Oblivion, Fallout 3, Saints Row 2. These are the games I have many fond memories of and still look back on today. Frankly, it's because I had such a shitty laptop at the time that it gave my broke ass the opportunity to check out older games. So when I say that I love a game like Fallout, or System Shock 2, or Baldur's Gate 2, that isn't rose-tinted goggles talking. It's just a guy appreciating how amazing these games were for their time, and Morrowind in particular, even to this day, is truly something special. My favourite part of any Elder Scrolls is the early game. It's the step out moment, as Todd Howard calls them. Seeing how big the world is and the feeling that you want to go everywhere, see everything. I deliberately walk everywhere because I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to fast travel and skip the main draw card, so to speak, even if it is going over the same territory. The magic of these games is in exploration, but as much as later Bethesda titles may have upped the ante visually, Morrowind was their lightning in the bottle moment. Even 20 years later, there's really nothing else like it, and part of that is because the game is so damn weird. I love conventional fantasy as much as the next guy. I've said before, I grew up with the Lord of the Rings films and a lifelong love of history. Despite how much the genre may try to subvert and put its own spin on things, A Song of Ice and Fire or Slavic folklore in The Witcher, a lot of it still essentially follows the same vaguely European design. Knights, dragons, cunning thieves, and devious mages. But then there's Morrowind, the product of what happens when Michael Kirkbride is locked in a room with LSD. The desolation of the ashlands, the mushrooms dotting the coastline, the sprawling megastructures of Vivek, and a prison floating in the sky. It's so wacky and creative in the best way possible. Can't levitate up to a Telvanni tower? Too bad, peasant. Did a quick stroll down the road mean you got your eyes pecked out by cliff racers? Outlanders, am I right? It's not to say there haven't been other games like it. Sigil from Planescape Torment is a great example, or the magical realism of Revachol in Disco Elysium, but nothing can quite capture that weird and wonderful world of Morrowind. It's been a real treat to jump back into it the past few days. I wanted a bit of a breather from cranking out videos as I was looking for something to play, but naturally, I got the itch to talk about it anyway. Since I've always played as a male Dunme in the past because I thought it fit best for obvious reasons, this time I decided to shake things up a bit and pick something else. This is Cyrene, a Redguard warrior for the Fighters Guild, and House Redoran, aka Best House. Thank God for that base disease resistance, by the way, because all the weird-looking wildlife is trying to kill you in some form or another. By the way, don't ask me what mods I have installed. This only really happened because I found a backup of the same install I've been using over the years. Unlike Skyrim, which is so dreary and grey, I prefer Morrowind and Oblivion basically untouched because they're beautiful without mods. If anything, the fancy graphical overhauls detracts from the overall experience or becomes uncanny because you can still see its age. If you're just looking to play, use OpenMW. It's incredible what the team has done with the engine. Anyway, taking those first steps out into the world as soon as you leave the census office in Seyda feels threatening because you have very little mechanical power to match. Let's be real, my fellow Morrowind enjoyers. The game makes very little effort to ease players into the experience, and it's understandable why so many people drop it before giving it a real chance. I'm not saying that's right right or wrong, by the way. Obviously, I have a lot of love for this game, but it's jank, and it's weird. And although it's certainly an acquired taste, it's part of why Morrowind is so special. For a long time, part of that was because I really didn't like the basis of the combat system. If you've never played Morrowind, it tries to have the best of both worlds by taking player input into account, the same as any other standard action combat system, while also calculating chance to hit through dice rolls in the background. Even now, I'm not really sure I like this design, or it's just that I've become accustomed to it over the years. Dice rolls in something like Baldur's Gate, for example, feel better because 1, it's isometric and combat is essentially abstracted as it is, and 2, those games are obviously rooted in tabletop design. You can see why then, for the average player to try and hit a mudcrab in Morrowind, they start getting annoyed at why they can visually see their weapon or spell hitting the enemy, but it's not actually doing any damage. Give it a little time though, because even a couple of hours in and you're going to be flying through dungeons. Literally, if you're into mage playstyles. Just ignore me constantly jumping around in the background, by the way. Gotta get my athletics and acrobatics up after all. This goes back to what I was talking about in the fun and balance video recently. Is it realistic or immersive to be jumping up and down like an idiot? No, but it's fun and part of the wacky, unbalanced charm of Morrowind. To give you a comparison, here's what movement was like starting out, here's where I'm at already in the mid-game. Like I keep saying, half the fun of RPGs is breaking them, so lean into it, and make sure you pick up the Scrolls of Flight as soon as you leave Seyda too. You can thank me later. Going through Morrowind again, I've been thinking about why I don't mind these quests when compared to later Elder Scrolls games. I hate the Radiant system, I always have, because it leaves the player on a hamster wheel being drip-fed content. But if we compare what you're actually doing, the bulk of Morrowind and Fallout 4's quests, for example, are essentially the same. You're given an excuse to go to a place, kill or loot a thing, talk to someone and throw gold in their face till they give you what you want, and then you return for a reward. Maybe why it feels so satisfying in Morrowind is down to the fact that it's getting you out into the world, and the loop goes all in on the exploration. Unlike Fallout 4, it's not about the flashy combat system or loot drops. Unlike Skyrim, it's not about mathematically calculated dungeons that all end with a chest. It's just getting out there and seeing the world, getting experience and messing around. There are worlds 10 times the size of Vardenfell being released now, and yet walking around the Ashlands, or the fields of Kumu, or trying to navigate the cantons of Vivec, these places feel infinitely more lived in and real in a sense. Even though they're technically much emptier, and you'll have cliff races on your ass the moment you go anywhere, Morrowind feels authentic while still being hostile, an obstacle to overcome. Pair this with the fact you actually have to work to progress in factions. Not be handed the leadership the second you can walk in a straight line without drooling on yourself. That feeling of being small is beautiful when compared to Skyrim or the average Ubislop, where everything revolves around you like it's your own personal playground. No doubt this is going to be heretical considering the ungodly amount of time I put into making mods for these games over the years, but I'm not particularly into Elder Scrolls lore. Certainly the later games where you'll see a lot of the books and interesting ideas of Morrowind recycle because Bethesda had nothing else to do, but the sheer weirdness of this game also feeds into the story side of things as well. As silly as I think it is from a practical standpoint that Morrowind, and to a lesser extent Oblivion, use the keyword system for dialogue prompts, think about how awkward this would be in real life. It again all feels authentic and handcrafted because of the little moments where personality does shine through. The fact that nearly all NPCs are unique and named rather than generic banded number 5462, or that simply walking past an ordinator you can feel the hatred emanating off them, or how Fargoth still thinks we're best buds even though I nicked his ring back and took all the gold for myself. I think part of what makes Morrowind so special is because it was able to hit the balance in being something purely systemic like Mountain Blade, the more linear character driven RPG like Baldur's Gate or KOTOR, not to mention the true hero of Morrowind, Rolly the Gua, aka Best Boy, we didn't deserve you. Finally, we come to the Nerevarin. Friend or traitor come. I think I've made it pretty obvious by now that I love this game a lot. It's a game that cannot be replicated. Even Todd Howard understands this, since he said himself he doesn't want it to be remastered. That being said, and stay with me here, the main story of Morrowind really isn't as great as it's cracked up to be. Here, we need to draw the line between lore or world building and what you actually do in the story itself. Morrowind is insanely creative. It's bursting with personality, but up until basically the very end, when you go past the Ghost Gate and into Red Mountain itself, you're basically doing the same thing as every other quest in the game. Now hold on, before you try and curse me to be one of Divathvir's daughters for an eternity. I'm not saying the writing behind this is bad. What I'm talking about is the basis of these quests. And again, I don't mind that a lot of what you're doing is essentially fetch quests, because it gets you out and engaging with the world like we've already been over. However, you can't deny that Morrowind's main quest is essentially one long series of fetch quests, and it's the character and lore around that which elevates it above the rest. If you are still here, I'm really not saying it's bad, just that the way people talk about Morrowind's main quest is a bit overblown. Speaking of which, despite how many times I've played it over the years, I've only ever played it right to the very end once. It's usually around the time you start doing the trials for the Ashlander tribes, and Azura has given you the ring, that I've explored most of the island. I'm high up or at the very top of the Morag Tong, Redoran, Fighters Guild, and that joy of exploration I spoke about all the way back at the beginning has faded. I think that's probably a good note to end the video on. Morrowind really was unique, and even though we may never see something like it again, it's a weird, wonderful experience that only gets better with time. Hey, little postscript section here for players who haven't tried Morrowind or are struggling to get into it. These are just tips that might help. I'm not an expert and I'm not trying to be. First of all, pick up everything you can in Seyda-Neen, preferably without stealing and getting the guard on your back. That's worth 10 or more coins. Go to the trading house and sell everything, even if you don't have high mercantilism, to get a good chunk of gold to set you up. Buy any armor, scrolls, or weapons you need here too. Make sure to get Fargoth's ring back inside the office and return it to him. Then go upstairs at the trade house again, talk to that Nord, and get the quest to find where his secret stash is. Go up to the top of the lighthouse, wait till around midnight, and then watch him walk over to the hollowed out tree stump. You can then grab his ring, which is very useful for a bit of healing early game, and take all the gold for yourself. Screw splitting it. I can't speak for mages because I've said before spellcasting doesn't interest me in RPGs, unless it's more of a hybrid like cleric, but for the rest of you, the most important thing you can spend your gold on early to mid game is trainers. This is not like the kind of trainers in later Elder Scrolls games. Skills, especially as you're starting out, are king. Bump up what you need as much as you can, it's going to be worth it. You'll find the game will start to click much faster. Run everywhere and jump around like a maniac. You're going to feel stupid doing it, but once you start getting higher athletics and acrobatics like you saw earlier, it's so much fun. Unless you absolutely have to, never do escort quests. Not only are NPCs so slow, Morrowind has the worst pathfinding I've ever seen in a game, and the collision to match. Trust me, you'll also get stuck on invisible geometry at times. Finally, let's talk about fatigue. The moment you see an enemy closing in or you've entered a dungeon, hit caps lock to toggle back to walking speed or hold shift temporarily to allow it to slowly regenerate. Fatigue is king. Even spellcasters rely on it, and you won't hit anything if it's constantly at 0. Slow down just before or right as combat happens. Make sure you hold down the mouse button to only do power attacks with melee weapons, and you're going to start getting the hang of things quickly. It's jank. It's definitely weird to have player input and dice rolls, but it's part of Morrowind's charm. Now go on, get out there and make Azura proud, or something. Now, time to get back to my playthrough.